top 10 games we are most excited for from our time at Pax Unplugged.
So what is Pax Unplugged? Pax Unplugged is a board game convention that takes place in Pennsylvania every December. It's a great trek for us because we live up in Canada. It's like an 8-hour drive. We're able to kind of go down there. Philadelphia around that time of year is wonderful. You have beautiful Christmas markets. You've got the lit up City Hall. The Philadelphia Convention Center is great. It's just a great time of year to kind of like get into board gaming.
And who can ever go wrong with a Philly cheesesteak? Ironwood is a new game by Mindclash. It was just released at PAX Unplugged and we were lucky enough to be able to play a demo. So it's a 2-player only game where you are going head to head and it's a real good tug of war while you are attacking other players, you are managing your hand of cards because not only do they have battle and shield for protection, but they also have certain actions that you can take. So you're going to be going up against the other player and you're going to be removing your different factions. And each player has asymmetric powers, which is actually really interesting because some have to move their units individually, the other player can actually move them together, and then when you lose a battle, your players actually get to move you to other areas of the board. So you're constantly battling, but you're not necessarily losing all of your faction, so you have a chance. Next time, it's not completely being annihilated where you don't enjoy the game moving forward.
It kind of looked to me like it had a mix of area control and kind of like card play, like not quite like a Twilight Struggle, but similar to that.
Yeah, I find it was a really sweet mix of hand management with actions and that area control. So I'm not an area control lover, however, I really did enjoy this game.
So how mean was it?
It was mean in the sense that your entire plan for the next 3 turns could be annihilated by the other person. However, there was always something else you could do because you had multiple factions around the board. So even though one of your units may have been completely obliterated or you may only have one guy left, you have so many other pools of workers along the board that you can just go after another area.
And it's war, right? Like war, you gotta get a little bit dirty.
At the end of the day, it's a 2-player dueling game, so it's not gonna be fuzzy and warm.
The one game we got at the con, but we did not play, was Everdale Far Shore. So this is a standalone game. It's not an expansion, but this is a new standalone game in the Everdale universe. So it's water-based. Instead of a tree, you're gonna get a lighthouse, but you've got a lot of those like Everdale-y kind of qualities to it. The one thing I really like about Everdale is it's a board gamer's game, but it's got enough heft, but it's not overly complex. And it's got that great art style, aesthetic, and components. Exactly. It's got all that going for it. So it's a pleasure to play. It aesthetically always looks great. And it's got just like that nice little sweet spot of like, you're a hobby board gamer, but you're still kind of like, you're in between both worlds. So in this game here, you've got boats, you've got all the cool little kind of critters, you've got all the cool kind of meeples, you've got, you know, a turtle pulling a wagon, you've got a walrus in a suit. So you have all those general things that I like about Everdale. So I'm really itching to get this one to the table.
Skyrockets is a kind of an extension or the gamer's version of kites. So if you've played kites, it's all about sand timers, you're flipping them, it's real time, you need to communicate, otherwise you have no hope in winning. Skyrocket's kind of that advanced version. You can play it as a campaign game. They do have 3 events that they recommend you playing together over 10 times, and then there's like an encore that you can play at the end. However, you can also mix and match the events any way you want. Again, it has sand timers. You're gonna be flipping things over in real time, trying not to let them run out. It's cool because you don't lose automatically if a timer runs out. This one has the ability that you can flip 3 characters over. So if you don't succeed, you can flip one over and you have 3 chances to still finish the game, and then you're scoring. And if you're doing that campaign mode, then you're gonna be tracking your score throughout the game until the end.
I like having additional real-time games. We have a couple real-time games and we've played a number, and sometimes they're good and sometimes they're not. I really enjoyed Kites, so if this is like kind of Kites +1, then I'm definitely, this should be fun. Tiger and Dragon, this is a game that just came over to North America this summer. It's been out in Japan for a couple of years. It is got thick, chunky, kind of like domino style bits. What you're doing in this game, every round there's a general scoring card, and if you say, let's say, have a 4-bit left at the end, you score X amount of victory points. You have a pool of dominoes in your game, and the number dictates how many are in the pool, i.e. there's an 8, there's 8 of these dominoes. There's a 1, there's 1 of these dominoes. There's a couple wild ones in between. Anyways, what you're doing is you're playing down your domino on your turn, you're trying to see if somebody can match it. Do they have that number in their hand? They play it to their tableau, you see what goes on at the end. It's better than what I'm explaining it as, but it's just like a nice kind of back and forth tactical game. It plays well at all player counts, great table presence. I really have enjoyed our plays of it.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of like kind of hidden numbers, because if somebody matches your tile, you can play one upside down, and then you have that information that you don't know what's actually left in the pool of dominoes in order to be able to figure out what last tile your opponent has.
Just kind of like bluff, mathy kind of control game, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Metro Runner is going to be a new 2024 release. We were lucky enough to be shown the game by Thunderworks, who are the creators of the role-player universe. It's got a new feel for them. It's a cyberpunk kind of theme, and you are basically trying to move around the board, get influence. You're going to be solving a little mini puzzle in the middle, and then you're going to be managing your hand. You're going to be trying to solve different contracts along the way. There's going to be worker movement, a little bit of area control, and you're going to be kind of trying to purchase tech off the black market in order to solve the puzzle in the middle.
Yeah, you're like a hacker in a rondel system. You're going around, you're doing a certain number of actions, you're trying to work this puzzle in the middle to match a victory point card. I think it looks pretty good. Like, the one thing I always like about the Thunderworks titles that we've played is the production quality is always off the charts, the rules are always great, and it's still, they always have like those kind of cool, accessible themes that you're just like wanting to play them more than others. So I feel like this will like scratch a number of itches, and I'm looking forward to seeing something outside of the role player universe that we can kind of really sink our teeth into. An older game, but newer for us, is Oni Tama. This is the first time we've played it. This is kind of a 1 versus 1 chess-like battle where you kind of have a king and then you have a bunch of pawns. You're moving up and down on your board based on a collective pool of movement cards. There's a total of 5 cards in the base game. You have 2, your opponent has 2, and there's 1 to the side. You take your turn and then you kind of slide all the cards around. So as the game goes on, you're getting more familiar with what your 5 cards are and what order they're in and how you can do your moves. Ultimately, you're trying to either like get your king out their side or you're trying to trap their king. So it's a really fun game, great production. When I first saw this box, I was like, do I need a box this size? But everything actually fits really nicely in here. It's got neoprene mats, cool minis. It's just like a nice tactile experience.
Yeah, I think it's a great game for anybody who likes chess, but wants to have kind of a managed pool of movements. So there's a lot of strategy and thinking behind what you're doing, even though the game itself is quite simple in what you're doing. We were lucky enough to have some time to play in the new look area, and we played a game called Bonsai. So as you can imagine, you're building a bonsai tree, and it's a tile laying game where you're laying different fruits, blossoms, actually parts of the tree, leaves, and you're gonna score points based on the tree that you build, but also you're gonna be drafting cards, and those cards are gonna allow you to pick up the tiles that you need to build your bonsai, but also end game scoring cards. So if you can manage to remember the cards that your opponent picked up, you can potentially try to stymie their building, but my focus was on my own table and building out my tree the way I wanted it. So it's interesting, you have some interaction in the way that you're drafting your cards, but you are also building your own bonsai tree and having a good time. So it's great for the people who don't like a lot of, head-to-head duel. However, it played great at 2, and I could definitely see it playing great all the way up to 4.
Yeah, I think I would have some prune juice with this, but it might have too much bark. The one thing I liked about this game is that you were drafting your workers. So there's still enough interaction in between, because I can see that Lisa's going for maybe a certain type of card, or she's got these bonus cards that, if she grabs a worker or this different kind of worker, she scores at the end. So there's a little bit of like paying attention to what your opponents are doing. That's going to get a little bit more convoluted with the higher player count, but The rules were simple, it had a nice aesthetic, it plays quickly, I'm pretty sure it has solo mode, so I think it checks a lot of boxes for that nice kind of relaxed, kind of, I'm gonna play a tree game kind of feel to it. In the footsteps of Darwin. This was a pleasant surprise for me, I'll be honest with you. I walked by it, I thought it looks okay, but then when you actually play it, it's like a nice, fast-playing set collection game. You're just drafting your tiles and you're trying to meet set criteria based on some of your end game scoring goals that you have and some other different goals that you'll get along the way. But chunky bits, cool looking art, you kind of have this little like ship moving rondel system, and it's just like it's pleasant, it plays quickly.
And what I liked about it was the fact that once you played a tile, it didn't lock up that space because you could stack tiles. And it also made it really interesting in the fact that I know that he wanted a certain tile in order to meet his requirements. I could actually take that and stack it on top just so that he can't get it. So there was some interesting flow that way as well, because you could block the other players, you could try to move that ship. You did have a little bit of flexibility with bonus powers and things like that along the way so that you could control the board more than just the ship moving it around, and you have to take the pieces within those columns.
You did have some flexibility, but for the most part, you're moving the ship around. The nice thing I liked about it is when you move your ship, you basically can just choose from 3 tiles. So I don't think you could get too AP prone in this game. I think it's gonna move along quickly, even for players that don't always move quickly.
Correct. If you can only make 3 choices, potentially 6 if you have a token that allows you to move forward or backwards, it really keeps it a nice tight game, turns out quick, and interaction is quick because people might take the tile you want.
Yeah, and I think the theme as well, and just the whole general art style, is you could play this with like people that are not fully into hobby board games as well.
We walked by Lucky Duck booth and saw a game that had amazing table presents, and it was Nestlings. So it's actually by Tangerine Games, and it was just up on Kickstarter during PAX. The really neat part of this game is the fact that the table presence is amazing. We got to play with the prototype, the deluxe version, and it had wooden pie slice pieces. You were building out your food chain so that you could feed your nestlings, and it had some bidding on different ecosystems so that you could get the resources you needed to feed your nestlings, because each player had a bird from a different ecosystem. So there's set collection, there's goal fulfillment, as well as you're competing with the other players on priority. So you're gonna be able to roll your dice. It was awesome that you weren't handcuffed. Every turn you were allowed to re-roll, and there was an area where you could place your worker dice in a pool so that you always were able to do something. You were never handcuffed that you couldn't do anything based on your dice roll.
Yeah, the one thing I really liked about the game is we only played, I think, with like the deluxe prototype components, but if you're gonna get this, like get the deluxe. It had a great tactile feel to it. You had these awesome birds. I don't know if the birds really do much of anything other than they just sit in your board, but they're wonderful. You have these cool custom dice with all the different iconography on it. You got these great wooden discs. You've got these other like smaller like triangular wooden discs you use to kind of score your points throughout the game. So from like a nice tactile board standpoint, like you feel like you're playing something substantial. And then once we get into the game, we only played the demo, but I think once you get into the full version of the game, there's a little more heft than what we received in terms of like bonus cards. There's a bunch of different things to do. So I think if you're into like a really high production quality game, get the deluxe version or play the deluxe version, try it out and see if you like it.
And like you said, the one neat thing was you're collecting resources along the way, and they score and add up as you go through the rounds. Because we only played a couple rounds, we didn't see the stacking ability of points, but you are collecting resources that some you're gonna use up. However, some stay on your pie-shaped board, and you're going to be scoring them each round, which was kind of a neat task in the fact that it's not one and done.
Yeah, I felt there was enough there. Like sometimes we'll play demos and you've played a couple rounds of a demo and you're like, I've kind of seen it. In this one, we played just a few more rounds. I was like, oh, do we have to like give up the table at this point? I wanted to play more just to see what more was there, which I think is always like a nice sign.
Absolutely. Luthier is a game developed by Patterson Games. They released Distilled, which was an amazing overall production. We were able to play the demo of this game at packs, and it was the prototype version. So some things might change from the footage that we have to show you. However, the gameplay was awesome. You were doing hidden bidding, it's worker placement with hidden bidding, so you didn't really know what actions you were going to be able to take or what priority based on your opponents. So that was a really awesome element, and the game is all about making instruments. So that's what a luthier is. You could do repairs on instruments, you could make an instrument, or you could do a performance. Those were really the ways that you could score points and keep your patrons happy. So there's going to be card drafting along the way. You are going to be collecting resources in order to do all of these actions. There's a really cool market where the cost of your resources changes each round. So you really need to balance and ebb and flow as you go. As well, somebody might steal the thing you need because it's hidden bidding.
One thing I liked when we were doing the demo, they were taking this kind of like move by move turn, and you were just playing it through so you could see all the different actions and mechanics. They said this was going to come in the main box as well. So for a heavier game, sometimes it's a bit of a pain to learn them. I don't feel that this will be that way. And then the rule book, at least from the one we've read from Distilled, I think does a good job laying everything out. So I'm looking forward to getting this like heavier game to the table, yet I'm not gonna have to spend hours upon hours learning how to play. I'm just iteratively gonna go through that tutorial for one go, and then I'm ready to go.
And he did mention that the deluxe version should have miniature instruments as the first chair icons, which is kinda cool. You're gonna get a mini cello and a mini trumpet. So I think that the overall table presence is going to be even more amazing than the photos that we have to share with you now.
That's something of note.
If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button. We are going to be coming to you with more about each one of these games as they hit our table and we really dive in deep.